Garrett Mitchell, better known to the world as Cleetus McFarland, walked into Rockingham Speedway on April 5th, 2026 with something to prove. The 31-year-old YouTube personality with 4.67 million subscribers had signed a developmental deal with one of NASCAR's most legendary organizations, Childress Racing, and this was his audition. Not just for the fans, not just for the critics, but for NASCAR itself, which required him to race at Rockingham before granting approval to compete at the Super Speedway level in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. What followed was one of the most debated days in recent NASCAR history, and it took a Hall of Famer to finally cut through the noise. Cleetus didn't arrive at this moment by accident. His long-term goal has always been the Daytona 500. He owns Freedom Factory and DeSoto Speedway in Florida, built his brand around drag racing content, Crown Vics, and wild car builds, and turned himself into one of the most watched automotive personalities on the internet. When Ty Dillon reached out on behalf of Childress Racing, the deal came together fast. The terms were straightforward. Cleetus brings an enormous social media following that NASCAR desperately wants access to, and RCR provides the elite infrastructure, coaching, and equipment to develop him as a driver. Austin Dillon described it plainly. He's got a fan base that is massive, and we want him to come in here and have fun at RCR, be himself, and bring that to his people. RCR VP Danny Lawrence added that Cleetus had that whole world figured out, and that RCR was just as interested in learning from him as teaching him. Rockingham itself was a doubleheader. In the morning ARCA Menard Series East race, Cleetus delivered his best performance to date. He qualified 7th, worked his way through the field, and finished 4th. A career best. He was running top 5 lap times, and the broadcast commentators noted he was visibly improving every single lap. His friend George Siciliano, known online as Squirrel McNutt, also had a strong showing, qualifying 11th and finishing 9th for his first career top 10. Both cars came home in one piece. It was, by any objective standard, a genuinely impressive morning. Then came the afternoon O'Reilly Series race, and the story changed completely. Cleetus qualified 35th. Dead last. He admitted afterward that he got scared during his qualifying lap and lifted off the throttle when he shouldn't have. He called it chicken footing it. He knew the car had the grip, he just couldn't commit. Then on only the 3rd lap of the race, he attempted a 3-wide pass on the inside going into turn 1. It was aggressive, it was too early, and it didn't work. He lost the rear of the car, went sideways, and while he saved it, that one move destroyed his tires. In NASCAR, sliding the car that hard generates extreme heat in the rubber. His tires were effectively gone for the rest of that run. The problems kept stacking up. He received a pit road penalty for pulling into his box too early. He then spun out on his own by overdriving a corner, flat spotting his tires in the process. That forced him back onto an old set that already had 60 laps on them. Late in the race, Austin Hill bumped him onto the apron. His spotter Ty came on the radio with a message that summed up the afternoon perfectly. "We've used up all 9 lives, just chill." Cleetus crossed the line 32nd, 6 laps down, he finished. But the day had not gone according to plan. The critics were ready. On the Door Bumper Clear podcast, Freddy said Cleetus met his expectations, but framed it as an indictment rather than a compliment. Kraft said, "If you were expecting him to do much more than that, you were kind of foolish." He acknowledged that Cleetus settled down after the early mistake and avoided causing bigger problems, but his core argument was blunt. The RCR equipment was wasted. He said you could put Cleetus in almost any car on that day, and he'd finish in the same position. Tommy Baldwin was even more direct and more sarcastic. He took a top 5 team, would have went home 6 laps down, finished 32nd, spun out 4 times. He did good. Yeah, he did good. To be fair to the critics, the numbers support some of that frustration. Finishing 32nd in one of the best equipped cars in the field is not a good result on paper. 4 incidents in a single race is a significant number at any level of NASCAR, and the lap 3 3-wide move was, by Cleetus' own admission on his podcast afterward, a terrible decision. He watched it back on video and said, "What the hell was I thinking?" Then Mark Martin spoke. The NASCAR Hall of Famer appeared on the same Door Bumper Clear podcast where the criticism had been loudest, and he said something that reframed the entire conversation. Martin did not oversell the performance. He was measured. He didn't exceed my expectations. I expected him to run about like he ran. But then he went further. He pointed to the moments where Cleetus saved the car. The slides, the close calls, the situations that would have ended the day for a less naturally talented driver. And he said this: "It was a tremendous challenge. He still got over his skis multiple times, but his driving talent saved it. Many other drivers would have wiped that car out in some of those slides and events that he had. I give him credit for that. I think he can drive. He's just gotta learn to drive these cars on these tracks." That is a Hall of Famer saying Cleetus McFarland has genuine driving talent, not YouTube fame, not a big audience, actual ability behind the wheel. Martin also put Rockingham in its proper context for people watching from home. He said, "Dude, you don't have any idea what it takes in the middle or the latter part of the pack at Rockingham. This is a track that has humbled experienced professionals. Asking someone with fewer than a dozen full-bodied stock cars starts to manage that environment at race pace, in traffic, on worn tires is genuinely difficult." Martin also pointed to how Cleetus handles himself off the car, praising his self-awareness in post-race interviews. The best thing about Cleetus is his interviews. He's coming out and saying, "Oh, this is way harder than I thought. He's fantastic." Martin's support carries additional weight because it wasn't reactive. Before the race, he had already gone on record on the Dirty Mo Media YouTube channel stating that Cleetus McFarland has a stronger following than any Cup driver in NASCAR, and that getting him involved in the sport is a win for everyone. Cleetus himself acknowledged the relationship. "I love Mark Martin. That guy has been so gracious to me. Him and Kenny Wallace have kind of been some of the few guys who have had my back." What Rockingham actually taught Cleetus was significant. The biggest lesson was side force. When a car pulls up alongside you on the outside, your grip simply vanishes, almost like a sudden change in tire pressure. Jesse Love, the former ARCA champion and his RCR teammate, had warned him about this before the race. The warning didn't fully land until Cleetus experienced it at speed. He also learned that one aggressive slide can ruin a tire for an entire run. Something that carries far more consequence in NASCAR than anything in his drag racing background. Watching the lap 3 footage back, he didn't make excuses. He called it out. His crew's message after the race was equally clear. They don't need to push him to go faster. They need to pull the reins back. At one point mid-race, Cleetus dropped in behind teammate Jesse Love, who was deliberately saving tires. Just watching Love's line, he said, "I was like, shoot, I've been doing that wrong all day." NASCAR's decision came down on April 7th, 2026. John Probst, NASCAR's EVP and Chief Racing Development Officer, issued a statement. He is approved right now for O'Reilly Series short tracks, which means he's good for all of ARCA, all of Truck, and then O'Reilly up through the short tracks. We'd like to see more out of Cleetus in the short tracks, so we're not saying no, but there is more that we would like to see out of Cleetus before we would approve him for Talladega. RCR's Danny Lawrence had already anticipated this, noting that NASCAR never got to see a live pit stop and that several things they needed to evaluate simply didn't happen on race day. Cleetus called the denial a kick in the nuts, but did not push back on the reasoning. He agreed he needed more time. "I need more windshield time, regardless of whether it's in an O'Reilly's car, an ARCA car, or a truck. More windshield time is gonna help me. I got a lot to learn, guys." His Talladega and Daytona Superspeedway appearances in the O'Reilly Series are now likely targets for 2027. The broader question, whether this entire venture is worth it, has a concrete answer when you look at the numbers. Cleetus's ARCA and NASCAR live streams have drawn close to 1 million viewers each. No active Cup Series driver commands that kind of individual stream audience. 2024 O'Reilly Series champion Justin Allgaier praised him for staying clean every time he was being lapped and acknowledged the pressure Cleetus was under. I know that today had to be really tough on him, and especially with kind of some of the social media stuff that he's had going against him in the last few weeks. So I was proud of him putting the effort in and trying to make sure that he was where he needed to be out to go and have a solid day. When asked if he would trust Cleetus enough to draft with him at Talladega, Allgaier was honest. "I can't answer that because I think there's a couple that we race with weekly that I don't know that I want to draft with at Talladega." That's not a dismissal, that's a professional being candid, and Cleetus has not disputed that he has work to do. His own words say it best. "I don't think I was super out of place. I'm confident that with more training and discipline, I can be too." The debate isn't really about whether Rockingham was a success or a failure. It was both, in different parts of the same day. The RCA 4th place was real, the O'Reilly 32nd was a hard lesson, and Mark Martin, a man who won 40 Cup Series races and competed at the highest level for decades, looked at all of it and said he thinks Cleetus can drive. That matters, and it does not get dismissed with a sarcastic comment on a podcast.